So my topic today was originally, I got to pull all my notes. I have,
Oh my gosh.
Charles, I have 1,
Brooke.
2, 3,
Brooke.
4, 5, 6, 7,
No,
8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
No,
13,
no.
14, 15, 16, 17. I have 17 tabs up.
You gotta calm it down. This is just like all of our conversations. Like, oh, like, keep it spontaneous. We'll be so chill about it. Brooke's like, well, I have 3 outlines, and I ordered them by priority.
Yeah.
Okay, 17 tabs.
Okay, okay. How this happened is there was a news piece that I had saved that I really wanted to talk about because it was just really good, heartfelt news. And I love good, heartfelt news because we don't get it that often in our field. And I don't know if you saw, but last September, the Center for Biological Diversity announced that 2 new Jaguars had been spotted in the United States. And I'm like, oh, that's so exciting. I want to talk about that. You know, like everybody, if you didn't know, last March and May, 2 male Jaguars were found on camera traps placed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Arizona. I think it was Arizona.
Oh, wow.
It was in Mexico.
Okay.
Oh. And so like this is fantastic news, okay? Like they're coming up here. I'm like, you know, I would love to say, you know, like, hey, Charles, did you see that? And then I started to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I assume there's a lot going on here.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pull up my notes here because it required that.
All right.
Because like the dates and the years and the times and all that stuff. So before I start, Charles, do you have like any background knowledge of Jaguars in the United States?
Kind of. And I'm really glad you asked that because I was just about to ask if we could cover a few basics for listeners and for me. But my vague understanding is that we are, you know, the southwestern United States, what is now the United States, essentially used to be the northernmost portion of the Jaguars range. And then their range has been, which, you know, like any species does when their populations decline, their range has been contracting. And so they're no longer found in the contiguous U.S. the way they used to be. But now we occasionally get these little exploratory, probably usually males, right? Because they're the ones wandering around. But so we get the occasional, you know, one kind of coming up from Mexico every now and then, right?
Dispersing male, as it's called in the cat world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you're spot on. So the Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico and Louisiana used to be the northernmost range of jaguar habitat. They were originally across 21 countries, and they're now found in 19. And what happened is it's the same story as happened in all American predators. So they used to, like I said, they used to freely roam and pristine habitat. If you think of like Mexico, like that's some similar ecosystem to what's in like New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. That used to be their hotspot.
So they were in arid environments because I always picture them as like a rainforest guy. Interesting. Oh, cool.
Yeah, definitely. But there's like some like mountainous jungle pockets ish too. I wouldn't quite say jungle or anything like that.
Forest.
But these forested areas that they inhabited in.
Wow.
But yeah, if you think of like Texas and Arizona, more the mountainous regions, like that is where they used to be found. And there in the 1800s, there's actually confirmed sightings of a jaguar as far as Long's Peak, Colorado. I know exactly where that is, having lived in Longs.
Wow.
Like, I lived at the base of Longs.
Yeah.
And also Monterey, California. So. And these were confirmed sightings. So who knows? They might have been dispersing males as well.
Yeah.
We don't know why they were there. That was outside of the normal realm. But those were confirmed sightings.
Jeez.
And they used to be pretty abundant from all of the, like I said, confirmed sightings by European settlers and also, you know, American ancestors. And then in Native American cultures. So like the southern indigenous communities, they have a ton of, you know, stories and art and literature, all of a spotted cat, of the jaguar. So clearly they were here for a very long time. However, as all predators, like I said, in the United States, in the 1800s, 1900s, they were the unfortunate victims
Oh.
of the U.S. government and ranchers' rampage against predators, Mexican wolves, pumas,
Wow.
pretty much all predators and jaguars. They were all fully extirpated, and for anyone who doesn't know what that means, they were completely removed from their American habitat. So the last, by the 1960s, all of them were removed. So the last confirmed female was shot in either 1963 or 1964. I saw two different articles quoting both of those years. So somewhere in that time window. And obviously this has huge consequences if a species is going to repopulate on its own. Because if you don't have females, you obviously ain't making babies. Mm-hmm. So that was the last time a female was seen in the United States. But in 1969, jaguar hunting was banned in important range states like Arizona. Wow. And then the Endangered Species Act passed in 1972. And the jaguars were put on
they were.
The ESA
wow.
as an endangered species.
Okay.
However, in 1980, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service delisted jaguars due to public objections, and obviously this blatantly went against the Endangered Species Act. So this went on for about a couple decades, and then in 1996, Warren Glenn, he was a rancher and a hunting guide from Douglas, Arizona, spotted the first male in the, Peloncillo Mountains, Peloncillo.
Yeah, Peloncillo.
I'm assuming that's Spanish.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was a houndsman, so he actually pulled back his hounds, which is pretty cool, this Warner guy. He snapped some photos, and he just let the cat go away. So ever since that, and then that started this like, oh my God, like jaguars are here. And actually right after that, there was more cats that had been spotted in these very remote places where they were just not touched, that these cats were able to get into. And then that re-sparked the interest in jaguars. So then in 1997, the Center for Biological Diversity started a campaign to have jaguars relisted under the ESA, and they won. And so jaguars were put back on the ESA as endangered, but then there was no plan put in place to recover them. So after that, the CBD took legal action and sued the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service 3 times to finally establish a recovery plan and denote critical jaguar habitat. And that all went down in 2018.
Oh, wow.
So they sued multiple times across the years. And finally, in 2018, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service announced a recovery plan with denotions of some habitat. So during all of this, I don't know, did you ever hear of the famous jaguar named El Jefe?
That does sound familiar. Yeah.
Did you hear about him?
I think I did.
So during all of this, so the CBD, they were like watching all of this. I also found this really cool map that I'll definitely have in the show notes. So there's an actual map that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has of the spots where jaguars have been spot on their cameras. And so I'll definitely have that map in the show notes because it's really cool to look through and you can see the details from the sightings and stuff. Anyways, so in 2011, El Jefe was first spotted in Arizona, and he was tracked and followed by, this is all observational data, until 2015. So he became very famous.
Oh, wow.
And he proved that jaguars could migrate here and live harmoniously on their own, not create any trouble, and just be a beautiful, magnificent cat as they are. He randomly disappeared in 2015 and was presumed dead because, big cats, he disappeared. And so we thought, but he magically reappeared in 2022 on a camera trap.
No way.
And so I read all kinds of different reports. They're like, what happened to El Jefe? How did he come back? And it was actually a lot of articles speculated that it was the border wall that got him stuck in Mexico and then he couldn't come up. I mean, I don't know. He is an independent cat. Who knows? Maybe it had something to do with that. Maybe it didn't. But as of now, he's still alive, and he was born in 2010. So and from all reports, he's still a beautiful looking cat.
Wow.
So that is actually a really old Jaguar.
Yeah.
So he's doing really
I was going to
well.
ask, so they identify him by his spot pattern. That's how they could tell it was him.
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking that. Yeah. So all cats, similar to our fingerprints, their spot patterns are individual to each cat. So I actually am, in my professional job as the director of conservation, I'm working with my biology team in Tanzania at our camps to run an AI database of the cats that are around our camps that are in the Serengeti, and then we'll branch to some of our other cats where we're using AI, and that's how AI works. It uses machine learning and all these magic guru stuff behind the scenes that I don't know what it does, but it learns the spot patterns of individual cats, and with insane accuracy can tell who a cat is. So that is how they've been able to tell that the 2 cats spotted last year were brand new males, never before seen in the database.
Wow.
Because it didn't match anything that had previously been seen. Mm-hmm. So that's super exciting. 2 new cats, and that's also how they were able to show that El Jefe was El Jefe.
Got it.
Because it was the same cat with his spot pattern.
Yeah, he's a good-looking dude. I'm looking up some pictures of him now.
Yeah, isn't he beautiful?
Big guy. Wow.
Yeah, he's huge. Not near as big as the ones I saw in the Pantanal, but those are the biggest jaguars in the world.
Oh, that checks out. That's a lot of food
Mm-hmm.
in the world's biggest wetland. I mean, that'll do it. It looks like he had a predecessor named Macho B. Did you see that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
So Macho B was the last known jaguar before El Jefe.
Right. Okay.
So these jaguars became really, really famous. There was Macho A, who was, from what I read, and I do need to do more research, just make sure the timeline of this. I'm pretty sure Macho A was the first one that was spotted, and there was Macho B, and then El Jefe. So these 3 famous, they were all male, and obvious, not unfortunately, just there was no female.
Yeah.
So again, a population can't reestablish. So then after that is when my notes end. And I have to go to all of my tabs here.
Well, I have a question, if you don't mind, before we get.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want to distract you too long,
please.
but I do have some questions here. I'm thinking just from a conservation standpoint. What does a conservation plan look like when you are in a country that is just the tiniest tail end of a species range, and no one's reported them breeding here ever since, or whatever, and all we have is the occasional bachelor moving through. How do we define what a conservation goal is for them in the U.S.?
Yeah, and so from what I was able to read, so this kind of goes on the next point. So I haven't been able to fully read the paper, but in, what year was this? 2021, this group of very famous, knowledgeable researchers came together, and they published this paper called A Systematic Review of Potential Habitat Suitability for the Jaguar in Central Arizona and New Mexico.
Oh, cool. So
they took the Jaguar reintroduction, or the Jaguar plan, because it isn't a reintroduction plan. I want to clarify that. This Jaguar coming back to plan, and they pretty much actually upon review, because from that plan, from what I read, it denoted this amount of space that was suitable for 6 jaguars. That's it.
Got it.
That is not a sustainable population.
Sure.
And so these scientists, they were actually, if we look at, and again, I have not had a chance to read the paper, because the next part of this conversation that got me so deep into this literally dropped yesterday.
Whoa.
Less than 24 hours ago. And that is how I got so deep in this.
Okay.
And I have not had a chance to read everything.
Yeah.
So with that science in mind, the CBD did a 116-page petition to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And from what I understand, they actually petitioned, I don't know if it was from the scientists or I have to read all these things, around 2 million acres of suitable habitat.
Jeez.
For the jaguars as it currently stands. I don't think that that's including, I think, I don't know, I don't want to say anything without being 100% certain, but I didn't see any specific remarks about private lands. Like I didn't see like in addition to that might be in there, but I didn't see that right off the bat that they were specifically talking about private lands. I think these are public lands, and they denoted at least 2 million acres, which would house 90 to 150 jaguars,
Oh, wow.
which would then be a sustainable population.
Yeah, and I'm assuming they don't like. I imagine that our goal is not to have like our own independent breeding population of jaguars, right? Like we probably want them to be connected to all the other populations going further south. Right?
Yeah, and that's one of the big things, and that's one of the big things that they're talking about, because the population in Mexico is apparently getting pretty isolated.
Oh.
And so some of the big initiatives is like this like jaguar corridor to help to connect all of the home ranges together so that there can be more mixing. So that is like one of the big, and also too, they used to be here. Like this used to be their
For
home,
sure.
and we killed them. We pushed them out. So, I don't know more from that perspective, like other than they used to be here and we should bring them back. If there's anything more than that, I don't really know, because me working in conservation tourism, and my mind immediately goes to that. Like, can you imagine if you could go to Arizona and like through a scope see a freaking jaguar?
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't have to hop on a plane with me to Pasadena.
Right.
We could go to freaking Arizona.
Right.
Like imagine just like the opportunities for ranchers that have all of these massive ranches, and like if they knew that they had a famous jaguar, that this was their home range and they had plenty of food and all that kind of stuff. Like just how amazing would that be? And to bring the apex predator back, like holy shit, dude. Like there is nothing more apex in the Americas than a goddamn jaguar. Like there's nothing more apex than that. Like what? Like wolves? I mean, yeah. No offense.
I mean,
no,
maybe there's nothing more apex in the warm parts. How about that? In the warm habitats. I always just think of grizzly bears, and I'm like, Chris, I've hiked in enough places.
Their habitats don't overlap.
Yeah. But I mean, in the areas they inhabit, I mean, they're the big guys. That's a serious animal.
They king.
So what?
They are king.
In this incredible drama of the extirpation and potential reestablishment of this totally, I think to American eyes, very exotic tropical animal. What happened yesterday that is making you, even more fired up than usual?
Yesterday, so this amazing, insanely detailed petition that was written by the CBD.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oh, gin and tonic. That was written by the CBD. And submitted, and this thing is detailed, and submitted to, let me pull up the press release, and submitted to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, this like very detailed explaining how, why, where, when, all the whatever about reintroducing jaguars. So I think taking more of a proactive approach.
We're talking about moving cats.
Yeah, I'm assuming he does. I've fully read it to be 100% on. Like I don't want to like say things that I don't quite know in it, but this petition that I said is 116 pages. That is insanely in depth. Talking about how and why jaguars should be placed where they say with hard science and everything, was rejected
by
the U.S. Fish and Life.
Okay.
Like just like. Boop.
Yeah.
Like, nope. And let me pull up the press release here. Let me see if there's something that I should. This is heartbreaking example of Fish and Wildlife Service continued failure to take proactive steps to bring jaguars back to their native range, says Lakin Jordahl, Southwest Conservation Advocate at the Center for Biodiversity.
Not mincing words, these guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're just like, F you. They're like, federal officials, and this is quote, federal officials should be aiding jaguar recovery, not making excuses that justify their continued inaction. Jaguars belong in the United States, and we won't stop fighting to protect and recover these magnificent cats. In the letter to the center received this week, the Fish and Wildlife Service said, quote, recovery of the species could be achieved without the presence of jaguars in the Gila National Forest.
Oh, so there's one particular place that they're...
Yeah, apparently. So this rationale ignores numerous jaguar experts who authored a groundbreaking paper that I just told you what it was, declaring 20 million acres in Arizona and New Mexico, including the Gila National Forest, suitable habitat for a breeding population of jaguars.
Okay. So I wonder, so those habitat suitability analyses, as we call them in the nerd business, those are typically based around, they can pick what their criteria are to select areas. And I'd be interested to see what it was they picked. If I were in their position, I'd probably also want to pick, like, people don't keep cattle in this place, right? Because even if the habitat's great, if they're going to, I guarantee you, if one sheep or cow gets killed, then suddenly you're going to be dealing with the whole rancher population, That's the really tragic part.
And that's, like, the biggest...
Yeah. If there's one slip up by one individual animal, suddenly they're all demonized to the nth degree. So I wonder how they treated that. It would be really interesting to see.
I can definitely. Obviously, all 18, 19, 20, whatever things I read, I'll definitely have in the show notes. But I'll specifically send you this because the methods. It's way too long for me to even think about reading this and giving you a summary in like a
of course.
But like considering the names that were on this paper, I'm sure they did their due diligence, but I didn't have a chance to fully read it because again, it's just crazy that I picked this topic and then yesterday night, evening,
that's when it went down, the rejection.
This press release dropped, and then in that press release quoted this paper that it was based off of, and I found the petition that they originally submitted to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This is happening right now. So, yeah, apparently Jaguars in the United States is, like, filled with, like, controversy and, like, lawsuits and, like, massive public outcry both ways. Like, we need to be bringing them back, and then strong opposition against them. I didn't expect to uncover so much drama in my Into the Headlines idea.
It sounds like you got yourself a whole like mini series there. Like that's a saga, and we've like scratched the surface.
I was just so happy because I was in Brazil and got to see all the Jaguars there, and I interviewed a lot of people there, and like getting ready to produce a podcast series about conservation of that area, like all since the Jaguars pretty much the keystone species there in that whole area. That's like the center theme of the whole thing. And so I have a piqued interest, of course, of anything big cat related. And then just to go into this, like, whoa, I did not. I didn't. I learned a lot.
Yeah. I just did too.
Yeah. So that is the saga. I think there's no other way to call it about Jaguars in the United States. And as I get more updates, I'll definitely share them throughout the show and anything that I see or hear. But yeah, again, like I said, I'll have all of the links to this in the show notes if anybody else wants to nerd out and see what details I missed, or read the petition, or read this beautiful scientific paper. Like, by all means, it'll be all there. But that is what I've been able to uncover in, like, 72 hours.
You didn't sleep during that time either, right? You were just...
Yeah. Lots of coffee. Yeah. Okay, so that was my topic.
Okay.